the owner operator model is booming, where if you were working for someone for say $25 an hour, you understand enough of their business, or so you think, that you're like, hey, okay, you're not servicing your customers very well, or you don't have enough equipment to do so. I'm going to go buy my own truck and then I'll come back as an owner operator. So there's more to be said in that model, but it's a new economy that we'll see. But it is tough right now from a job perspective. Like, we had to go to 2 grocery stores, honestly, just to find milk for my 3-year-old. So it's I can't say that's everywhere.
Welcome to Stream, a trucktractortrailer.com production. My name is Zach Miller. I'm your host, and really excited today to be joined by Josh Hannaberry, who is the host of the Truck Focus podcast, and a Canadian, and a proud Canadian, of course, as all Canadians are. But here's the thing, right, Josh? I think the timing of you coming on is perfect, because right now in the news, we are inundated with stories about the cross-border freight portion of the supply chain. You know, we discussed some of these supply chain issues on Stream. Of course, they've been discussed, since the pandemic started. But now the focus, and pun always intended on Stream here, the focus is really on these cross-border issues, of which, it impacts you, it impacts me, it impacts all of us here in the US and Canada.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks for having me on, Zach. And yeah, it's an interesting situation where I think I monitor what's happening, I would say, on the Canadian side a little closer than maybe south of us. And it's impacting everyone. It's not just you didn't want to get a vaccine, okay, go park your truck. Like, it's not about that. And I think from a media standpoint, maybe it's a stirring up emotions type thing where you're going to have one versus the other, and it's not about that. It's ultimately impacting everyone, and from the shelves to, like we were talking off camera, to who's going to operate the dump trucks post this entire fiasco. And truck drivers leaving the industry, thousands upon thousands of drivers are being impacted, like I said, regardless of the vaccine, because you're still waiting at a border. And just the whole process has been, it's been emotional, because there's a lot of professionals out there that really care about what they're doing. They take a lot of pride in what they're doing. Their paperwork's legit. Their hours of service are legit. Their tractor's in great condition. Now you're throwing different technology at them that works some of the time. And then you have border crossing agents that are being educated on the fly. So having high emotional conversations. But yeah, ultimately it's very tough. It's a tough environment right now, and we're recording on the 22nd. So with the state mandate coming in too, I think it's just, it's going to be a tough couple of months till we kind of find a new normal.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think that, so as you said, we're recording on the 22nd. So last week, the Canadian border mandate went into effect. And there was a lot of back and forth on that. It looked like, Canada, the Canadian government was going to hold strong for a long time, and then I think 48 hours before, they said, well, maybe for Canadian drivers we can give a pass, but not for American drivers. And I think that kind of forced the US to be like, well, then we'll just go ahead with our mandate on foreign drivers. And it's like what are we doing, a border cold war between Canada and the US over freight, which is like hundreds of millions of dollars? Like, what is going on here?
Yeah, that was one of the more confusing experiences I think our industry's had. And honestly, there's a couple of people I really did want to give a shout out to that have been a strong voice from a very neutral stance, which I respect, as I try and stay neutral through advocacy. So there's Shelley Walker with the Women's Trucking Federation of Canada, Mike McMillian with the PMTC, and Rita Smith with Road Warrior News. I have personal relationships with them, and they've done a really good job maintaining a neutral balance, speaking on fact. And this whole back and forth, and then, the ripple effect of that was very confusing, very frustrating. I know there's a convoy taking place right now to, speak against the mandate. And I think that just added fuel to the fire. Like, we need to be consistent, and it is what it is. What is the decision? Okay, how do we comply with this decision? Don't make industry guess, because we know that doesn't work.
Exactly. Don't make industry guess. And you have to give a reasonable timeline. And even then, you can't be waffling on it, Like, if you're saying, hey, this is what it's going to be like in 5 weeks from now. That's what it needs to be like in 5 weeks from now. It can't be like, 4.5. That's what it's going to be like in 5 weeks from now. And then 4.5 weeks from now, we're like, okay, but we're going to actually tweak A, B, and C. It's like, how?
Yes.
What?
Well, yes. Yeah. And so prior to January, there was major retailers that they enforced their own mandate period. Some of it was October and November. You can't come to our property without. And if you're a smaller carrier, your head's in the weeds, you're just trying to service your customers, you have no clue until you arrive to the door. And maybe you're a third party hauler for X, and you move that dry van that's full of X product, and you get there and show proof of vaccination. And you're like, what do you mean? So it's the same thing now where the government, again, they're going to do what they're going to do. And I can't say I completely oppose the decision. I just don't agree with the process whatsoever, as well as the disruption. And if you look from a boat perspective, if you look at inland perspective, there's already so many disruptions. As humans, we freak out, we mass buy. Like there's so many things going on where this was just, in my opinion, it's unnecessary. And that's not saying I'm not for or against the vaccine, because like we're vaccinated as a family, but it's more of the decisions. And yeah, you're right. Give us a clear map. Where do we go from here? And then let's live in that space. But that's not what happened. It's very tough.
I totally agree with you. And I really respect you taking a very, reasonable and practical approach to this whole thing. But you did bring something up that I'm curious about. So right now, across Canada, what is the state of the small businesses? Are they able to get supplied? Are they staffed? Are they able to fulfill customer requests? What's going on over there right now?
Yeah, so two things. So more than two things. We've been talking either yourselves and I love TTT. I'm a big fan, and shout out to Alan as well, where equipment shortage doesn't help, and confusion in an employer environment doesn't help. So just through the pandemic, people have been laid off. Okay, you can come back to work. Nope, we got shut down again. So anytime you close borders, you close doors, that disrupts obviously putting anything on the shelf. From there, I think the two things that have happened. One, people don't know about job security right now. That's a really common thing. Like, what is job security? The other, on a flip side, and this is kind of ties into the equipment shortage, is the owner operator model is booming. Where if you were working for someone for say $25 an hour, you understand enough of their business, or so you think, that you're like, hey, okay, you're not servicing your customers very well, or you don't have enough equipment to do so. I'm going to go buy my own truck and then I'll come back as an owner operator. So there's more to be said in that model, but it's a new economy that we'll see. But it is tough right now from a job perspective. Like, we had to go to 2 grocery stores, honestly, just to find milk for my 3-year-old. So it's I can't say that's everywhere, but when you're aware of the challenges, like you can go to your local, like do you have Costco down south?
We do, yes.
Okay, so we went to a Costco. Normally it's an overwhelming amount on the shelves, and like my wife and I were both in the supply chain, and we're like, it's not as full as it normally is, and that's just the new norm. I went to a mall the other day, and the same kind of thing. You're kind of like, okay, like just when you have to restrict access, people are like, well, I don't want to go there. So I think ultimately we have a lot of mountains to climb to get back to, I guess, a happier place. But on the flip side, again, the Canadian oil market, similar, I'm assuming, to the south, we're starting to see an improvement there, which always helps. So I don't want to talk all doom and gloom. Like, yes, there's some pain points, but there's a lot of opportunities too, as long as you're looking for the opportunity.
No, I think that's a really good point. And I think that's also very similar to what's happening here in the US, particularly, with the opportunities for owner operators. And, you mentioned equipment and you mentioned some of the more heavy duty stuff. I know that because, people in the neighborhood know what I do for a living. And sometimes, I'll see them at the gym, I'll see them at the bar, whatever. And some of them work, in construction, and they'll say, hey, I'm thinking about getting a CDL. I'm thinking of becoming an owner operator. They're aware of what's going on. And I agree with you. I think for that entrepreneurial mindset, and especially, truck drivers are hardworking people to begin with. I think there's a really, really interesting opportunity for them to really start building a better life for themselves and for their families right here, right now. And it's interesting that that's happening in Canada as well.
Yeah, and it's nice. So people are afraid, not afraid in a bad way, maybe not afraid, but people are mindful of long haul. But I think as major retailers continue to acquire new businesses, as major carriers continue to acquire businesses, I really think the regional model is going to blossom. And if we continue in the direction we're going, which I completely support, more women getting into the industry, more people that maybe they had a different type of disability where they could not be in the construction trade, but absolutely they can be behind the wheel. Regional is very attractive. And I think just like Walmart, for example, does a great job. They're very strategic with their distribution centers. So it's that model continues to enter into Canada with different locations. It could be building supplies. It could be like landscaping materials. It could obviously be freight. There's a lot more of an opportunity where you don't have to be gone for 3 weeks at a time. And that also is attractive. As long as you can buy the right equipment. I'm a huge compliance junkie, so you got to get your program set up and comply with the law. But yeah, there's a lot of opportunity there too.
Is the compliance and law aspect, in Canada to haul freight, is it a little bit more streamlined than it is down here?
No, you guys are blessed with the FMCSA, where I'm sure there's pain points with the FMCSA, but there's a lot of really overarching information where each province has different requirements. Obviously, there's federal requirements, but then you could have municipal requirements. You need special permits to go on this road for 6 minutes. Like, it's all over the place, and there's not a really effective way to communicate all to each other. So it's tough. And I work really closely with, they're called an auditor, and they're contractors for the government of Alberta. And yeah, he says everything in good faith. And he's just like, we need to be stronger in message. Like, that's actually what feeds a lot of the podcasts on Truck Focus podcast is, if I trust an industry leader and they're like, there's not enough communication on this, I'm like, perfect, let's do an episode. Or who can I find that we can do an episode? Because that's the ultimate goal, is to better our industry. And yeah, you and I could have a great conversation off camera, and if it went nowhere, it's not helping anyone. That's the power, obviously, of Stream and the Truck Focus podcast is, okay, what's a carrier profile to identify up here? Or what's a driver's abstract? Or what's the impact of a speeding ticket? Again, every location, it seems to be a little different, every province is. So I think it's up to industry, so people like ourselves, to start communicating that more so than just relying on the government to say, hey, this is what this is, or this is what that is, because they're busy with other stuff too.
No, I agree with you. I think that's great. And I think, you know what else is also really cool? Because another thing that, not freight related, but just in general, topic of conversation is how toxic the internet has become. But I think something like this, it's like, let's take it back. Let's take the internet back to what it was designed to do, away from that toxic garbage, more to that cross communication, more to providing real valuable information, and sort of bringing people together instead of, siloing them apart.
It's funny though, when you start doing that, because that's exactly where my heart's at, where like, we all have days where doom and gloom just happens to slip off the tongue really fast. But I much prefer living on the other side of the conversation, where I'm not the popular choice at times, and I see that. And like, we have Facebook groups across Canada, and the entire goal is, it's not business advertisement if it's helping industry. It's not like, oh, you're spamming me. I'm like, no, it's not about that. It's, this is what you need to know. It's not, you just don't like the topic because we're not complaining about an accident that happened. We're talking about specifics. And it's interesting how people respond when you go against the flow. And yeah, I don't mind. Like, I got broad shoulders, and keyboard warriors will do what they do. But ultimately, it's my call to action every day. And I'll use that right here too, is if you're an independent leader, if you're a leader of any sorts and you have a positive voice, you got to speak up, because there's so many things we need to know.
I completely agree. I love it. I love the attitude. Truck Focus podcast, how do people find it?
Yeah, so any major podcast platform, just search Truck Focus Podcast. We're on YouTube, or just go to our website, pvtlindustry.com.
Perfect. Josh, thank you so much today. Really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thanks, Zach. Appreciate it very much.
You guys like what you see, what you hear, freight, logistics, owner operators, trucking, small business, all that fun stuff. Please be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time on Stream.